At exactly 3:07 a.m., my phone rang. It was my older brother, a police investigator, who never called without a reason. His voice sounded different, not scared, not nervous, urgent. He said, "Turn off every light in the house. Take your wife to the basement, lock the door, do not tell her why. And whatever happens next, do not come out until I call you again." Then he hung up. 30 minutes later, through a tiny crack in the basement door, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My name is Daniel, and my older brother Michael had worked as a police investigator for almost 15 years. Throughout his career he had seen violent criminals, fraud networks, missing person cases, and situations most people only hear about on the news. Because of that, he was not someone who panicked easily. If Michael sounded concerned, then something serious was happening. That night started like every other night. My wife Emily and I had gone to bed around 11. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing exciting ever happened. The streets were calm, neighbors knew each other, and crime was almost non-existent. That is why hearing my phone ring after 3 in the morning immediately felt wrong. When I answered and heard Michael speaking in a rushed voice, my stomach tightened. He gave his strange instructions without explaining anything and disconnected before I could ask a single question. I stood in the dark bedroom trying to process what had happened. Emily woke up and immediately noticed the fear on my face. She asked what was wrong, but Michael had specifically told me not to tell her anything. I simply said there might be an emergency and asked her to come with me downstairs. She looked confused but followed me. Within minutes we were sitting in the basement surrounded by storage boxes, old furniture, and holiday decorations. I locked the heavy door and switched off my phone flashlight. The silence felt unbearable. For nearly 20 minutes nothing happened. Emily kept asking questions while I pretended everything was fine. Then we heard the sound of tires outside. Multiple vehicles had stopped near our house. At first I assumed it was police activity, but then I noticed something unusual. No flashing lights appeared through the basement window. Whoever had arrived wanted to remain unnoticed. My heart began pounding harder. I carefully walked toward the basement door and looked through a narrow crack between the frame and the wood. What I saw instantly made me freeze. 3 men dressed in dark clothing were moving around my property. They were carrying flashlights and communicating through earpieces. One of them appeared to be checking windows while another walked toward the back entrance. None of them looked like police officers. Emily saw my expression change and immediately realized something was terribly wrong. Before I could respond, another vehicle arrived. This time several marked police units surrounded the street. The men outside reacted instantly. One ran toward the backyard while the others attempted to leave in their vehicle. Within seconds officers moved in from every direction. Flashlights illuminated the entire neighborhood and commands echoed through the darkness. Through the crack in the door I watched as police detained all 3 suspects. The scene looked like something from a crime movie. Yet the biggest shock came a few minutes later when Michael stepped out of one of the police vehicles and walked directly toward my house. When he finally entered the basement, I demanded answers. Michael explained that investigators had been tracking a burglary crew connected to several violent home invasions across the state. Earlier that evening, detectives discovered evidence suggesting my address had become their next target. The criminals believed valuable evidence connected to an unrelated financial investigation was hidden inside my home. They planned to break in before dawn while we were sleeping. Because the intelligence was received at the last moment, Michael called me immediately rather than risk waiting. I thought the nightmare was over, but Michael revealed an even bigger surprise. The burglary crew had obtained information about my house from someone they trusted. During the investigation, detectives uncovered communications linking one of the suspects to a former contractor who had worked on my property months earlier. That contractor had secretly provided security details, floor plans, and information about our routines in exchange for money. Someone we had welcomed into our home had helped criminals target us. Over the following weeks, the entire case became public. The suspects were charged with multiple crimes connected to home invasions, conspiracy, and organized theft. Evidence recovered from their phones linked them to several unsolved cases. The contractor, who supplied information, also faced serious charges. As investigators pieced everything together, it became clear that Michael's phone call had likely prevented a dangerous confrontation. If Emily and I had remained upstairs, we could have been caught in the middle of a violent break-in. The experience changed how I viewed safety, trust, and family. For years I had assumed danger was something that happened somewhere else to someone else. I never imagined criminals would specifically target my home. More importantly, I realized how much my brother cared about protecting people, even when it meant making impossible decisions in the middle of the night. That single phone call may have sounded frightening, but it was the reason we were still safe. Months later, I asked Michael what would have happened if I had ignored his call. He stayed silent for a moment before answering. You probably would have met those men face to face. That answer still sends chills down my spine. Every time my phone rings late at night, I remember the fear in his voice, the darkness of that basement, and the moment I looked through that tiny crack in the door and saw danger standing just outside my home. Sometimes one phone call can save a life.